They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them.
Fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
From bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 3. Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the team's. Welcome to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. This is the official Bowls New Zealand podcast where we talk everything bowls.
So I'm here with the Bowls New Zealand CEO, Mark Cameron, fresh off the back of his Taranaki Open men's fours exploits. So the first question, Mark, is how did it go? How was your week?
Oh, just before you do that, I like how you're rolling the R's there in the Taranaki Open.
Taking a
Grant
leaf,
Hassall?
yeah, taking a leaf out of Mr. Hassell's book.
Brilliant.
I don't do it quite as well as some, but
No, you don't. No one can. No one can ever know as much about the Taranaki Open or the Somerset Dominion Fours as Mr. Grant Hassall. I really love the Taranaki Open. I take a week's annual leave for the Taranaki Open. Such is my enjoyment of the event. Just to get out and about with my mates, play some bowls, and obviously meet some new people from around clubs, and really enjoyed it. We had a victory. 1. Does that count?
That's good. Yes, it does count. Yep.
Brilliant.
It's a win.
So 1 out of 7, but we also were competitive in every game. So I think that was quite pleasing for us, and for me especially in terms of being a new bowler. And they even let me skip the last game.
Wow.
How
many ends was the last game? Did you play it all out, or was it?
No, we played it all out. We played Aramaho from Wanganui, and they needed to win to qualify, and we were 2 down going into the last end, into 25th end. So we're pretty pleased.
Yeah, rightly so.
Ask me whether I had more drives than draws.
Do I want to ask you that question, Mark?
Yes, you do, because I had more draws than drives.
More draws than drives.
I know, I'm learning.
It's a good percentage. It
Thank
sounds
you.
like it was a good week. So, yeah, we've had a chat about the Taranaki Open, and we'll just move now. So over the weekend, obviously, we had the Open and it finished, and we had an announcement from the government that all of New Zealand was moving into red on the COVID protection framework from 11:59 last night, because we were recording this on a Monday. Could you just talk us through how is that going to impact events run by Bowls New Zealand or our clubs going forward?
Well, I guess the good thing is we've got experience of this now. In fact, we've got experience of being halfway through a national event and alert levels changes. So we're used to it now. The reality is that our events around the country, our clubs around the country, will largely carry on business as usual, with the exception, obviously, we've got capacity limitations being 100. We've got distancing or the 1 metre distancing rules that need to be applied, and certain rules around hospitality, the bar, that need to be applied. But pretty much we're okay. We will carry on. We need to be mindful, though, that we're in red now. And things could change. If we end up, getting to thousands of cases a day, then I would expect that there'll be even more limitations placed upon ourselves. So we have to be always on the ball and always looking the next change might be. In terms of the Somerset National Fours and mixed pairs, we're carrying on as per normal. The changes being, though, that we'll quite likely just use 1 green clubs, and we'll probably just use 6, maybe 7 rinks per green or per club, and that kind of puts us at a number around 50 to 60, plus a few volunteers. That might be 60, 70 type numbers, and that's well within the 100 level, and we feel that's quite responsible. So at this stage, unless something materially changes again, then the Somerset National Fours and mixed pairs will carry on, and we welcome people into the Taranaki. We obviously, we'll be pushing the strong messaging around scanning in, and you'll need your vaccine pass. You'll need to abide, by the distancing rules, etc. But yeah, all go.
That sounds good, and we've got good entries for that so far, Mark. They're rolling in, and you've got until the 1st of February to get an entry into the Bowls New Zealand Somerset National Fours and Mixed Pairs. And if you're listening to this and you think you want to put an entry in, just go to our website, bowlsnewzealand.co.nz, or just Google Bowls New Zealand. You'll see a few different places that say Somerset Nationals. Click on that, and it's a pretty simple step then to sign up and enter on Bowls Hub Aotearoa.
Yeah. Although being an older person, Alex,
yes,
a line I've been running at a few people over the last couple of weeks is if you have any issues with Bowls Hub Aotearoa at all, just call Colin.
Colin.
Yeah. And Colin will put your entry in for you. He'll set you up in the system, and away you go.
I second that. Definitely call Colin, and then we can provide the moral support.
Yeah,
from around the office.
No, we look forward to that, and we're really pleased with how that system played out through the Somerset National singles and pairs. And whilst there's a little bit of pain in terms of initially signing up, you only got to do it once, and then from there you're in our system, and you can register for whatever events. And we'll be using this system for inter-centre, inter-club, Bowls 3-5, all events going forward. So. No, it's good. All good positive stuff.
Mark Cameron there, the CEO of Bowls New Zealand. Stay tuned for the Bowls Hour with Miles Davis and Alex Reed.
Welcome to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. This is the official Bowls New Zealand podcast where we talk all things bowls. I'm joined by Alex Reed as my co-host, and today we're going to be talking to Grant Hassall, Alastair McKenzie, Steve Beel, and Graeme Rees. A decent little lineup you've got there for us, Alex.
Yeah, I'm really pleased, and it's a good variety of bowl stuff that we're going to be talking about, Miles, so I'm looking forward to a great show.
Did you get down to Taranaki?
No, I didn't go down, but I was eagerly watching the results come in on that Google sheet that they had. Our CEO, Mark Cameron, went.
Yeah, I know. He said the bowls went well. How exactly did they go?
They won a game of bowls, I believe, Miles.
Oh, well,
I'm not sure
that's as good as anything. That's as good as could be hoped for.
Yeah.
It's one of the top tournaments in bowls in New Zealand, isn't it? The
Yes.
Taranaki Fours.
Yeah, it has. It's got the largest entries of any bowls tournament in New Zealand, and has had, well, granted, tell us for how long, but for at least the last 50 years. So that's our first guest, Miles, we're going to have a chat to. It's Grant Hassall. He's the man behind the Taranaki Open and knows everything that you need to know about it. So I'm looking forward to that very shortly.
So am I.
Right, on the phone now, Miles, we've got Grant Hassall from Taranaki, fresh off the back of the men's open that he's been running, and we're just going to pose some questions. So the first one, Grant, is how are you feeling after your long week?
Oh, fighting fit. How can you not be after the rain-blighted, sun-blistered tournament that we enjoyed in the 117th edition of it?
117 years, Grant. That's phenomenal. Where does it rank in terms of longevity in New Zealand bowls tournaments?
It would be right up the top in terms of the length of it. There's obviously been club championships that a number of clubs that would exceed that, particularly for the singles championships and clubs. But in terms of the big tournaments, is obviously significantly longer than the Dominion tournament, which didn't start until 1913, and they missed a couple of years during the Second World War, which we certainly did not. So from 1906 until right through to now, it's the 117 years, and as Councillor Gordon Brown said when he officially opened the tournament on Monday morning last, that not even world wars or pandemics can stop this tournament going ahead.
Yeah, that's not wrong, and it's great to see. It was a good open this year, would you say?
The feedback that we have received from the vast majority of players has been overwhelmingly positive. We aim for perfection, although we never quite get there, and there's one or two minor things that I would have preferred we'd done slightly better, but I am, of course, being very, very picky indeed. When the weather's good, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to run a tournament.
It does. I still have an occasional nightmare about the Nationals a year or two ago at Carlton Cornwall, where the heavens opened for us and we had swimming pools instead of bowling greens, Grant, but that's okay. I'm at peace now. So the Taranaki Open was run this year. It was run by a local team, wasn't it? Could you just give us a background as to the four players who've won an Open this year?
Yes, it was won by the West End side of Jordan, Dallas, Lynn, Dave Wilson, Steve Walker and Craig DeFaria. 28 points to 6. They ran out winners over the Whangarei side of Steve Smith, George Lydiard, Paul Wakeman, and an impressive skip called Trevor Dusty Reader. But in terms of the Defaria side, they didn't actually play in the competition in 2021, but they certainly did in 2019 when they won the tournament as well. And in 2020, the same four lost the final on 5 extra ends after it had been a tie. So from 3 runs in the last 4 years, they've had 2 wins and a tie, as Craig described it in his victory speech, and that is impressive in any competition. But to do it in the Taranaki Open speaks volumes for the consistency and the compatibility of those 4 guys.
Grant, there must be sides. I mean, this is a dominant side in recent years. Are there sides that have achieved even more than that have won it more times? I seem to remember talking to Danny Delaney, and he said that he'd won it a few times. He might have been fibbing to me, but is there other eras where sides have been really dominant and got multiple wins?
There has been. The tournament has been won back-to-back on 4 different occasions, most recently by Gary Lilly in 2008 and 2009. Delaney didn't tell you any fibs, Miles. In fact, has won it 4 times, the most out of anyone in the modern era. On each occasion, he has had a different side with him. There have been some commonality on some of the players, Mike Neasy and Joe Whitelaw amongst them. But in terms of combination, this Craig Defaria combination is certainly starting to build a record which is going to be, I think, potentially the most successful we've seen. The Open has been won on 7 occasions by the late James Lobb, or Jimmy as we knew him, who competed in over 50 Taranaki Opens. But once again, like Danny, he had different combinations with him in each of his victories. The benefit, I think, in bowls that we don't often put enough credence on is that commonality of team membership. The Faria side, which incidentally played 5 times in the tournament before they won it without ever making Saturday's rounds, is now in a situation where they are operating at the peak of their powers. And indeed, I think they pose a big threat to the Dominion Fours, which will be held in New Plymouth at the end of February.
So the Taranaki Open, it's been around for a long time, obviously, and is a really high-regarded tournament. Does it count towards a gold star for Bowls Taranaki, Grant? Or like if someone gets 5 Taranaki Opens, is there a special recognition there? Yes,
since 1968, it has counted towards the Taranaki Gold Star Award. And incidentally, as a further background to those 4 victorious players, all of whom have gold stars, Lynn now has 9 titles. Walker picked up his 10th, and Abato the star yesterday. And Wilson 13, and Defaria heads the list in Taranaki with 27.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it? 27.
Well, Miles, it is, of course. David Files got the most over at Gisborne East Coast, and during the week I always make a point of catching up with the 2005 winner, Ray Park of Whanganui, and ask him how many he's up to. And he tells me he's got 71 in the River City.
Oh, there you go. So less competition down there, a little bit further south, though, isn't there?
Yes, over the years, Miles, they've only had the likes of the Trillos, the Johnsons, the Bellises.
Not much competition at all. That's great. So over this week, did anything interesting happen, Grant, apart from the winners? Were there any interesting stories this week at the Taranaki Open?
Oh, there are always lots of tall tales and true, some of them. That occurred during the competition. And I think from a personal perspective, one of the highlights for me was just to see the warmth that I encountered from so many of the visitors. And it reiterated to me that there very much is still a traditional market in bowls. People that like the 25 end games. If I just look at the Point Chevalier skip Aidan Takarua, who appeared in his 3rd successive Open tournament, here he was still battling it out in the rounds on Thursday to determine whether his opponent could or couldn't qualify. It didn't mean anything to him, and he played a couple of absolute stingers and pulled a 7 and ultimately denied a local side from qualifying. Why? Because that theoretically could make his chance in post-section slightly better. And further, I spoke with the side that eliminated Takarua on Friday, Ross Thorne, the 2006 Dominion Fours winner, and he said what a pleasure that guy was to play against. There was absolutely no negativity, even when things weren't going in their way. And I think that spirit of the tournament as well, the friendliness of it is why people love it. And for me, that was the shining feature that stuck in my mind.
That'll do just fine, Grant. That's a great story. And I'll segue into the last question because we're going to ask everyone this one, and I think everyone has an answer to it. We're just going to pose, what's your favourite bowls moment? I know it's hard to pick one, but if you were to pick one bowls moment for you personally, Grant, what would you pick? What's your favourite?
But personally, for me, my favourite bowls memory was in 2017 when I went to the UK to visit the 48-game veteran for Taranaki, Chris Walker. And I went and played on Plymouth Hoe, which is where the European settlers for New Plymouth first departed. And of course, where Drake in 1588 told his advisors to get stuck, he was going to finish his game. And then B, most of all, to spend 4 hours and have 4 heads with the great David Bryant at his home club at Clevedon, and with David Rees-Jones, the voice of the BBC. That was, to me, the ultimate that I could ever experience in bowls.
I'll tell you, you mentioned David Bryant, and it takes me back to my younger days there, Grant. He was a legend and well in my consciousness in those days. But also, Francis Drake, I wasn't around when he was around, but do you know, you're a stats man, Grant, did he win that game before he went out and beat the Spanish Armada?
Well, I am a stats man, but I don't have the answer to your question. It certainly was the most famous game of bowls ever played. Perhaps they were just having a roll-up instead of keeping the score.
Fair enough. Hey, well, thank you so much indeed, Grant Hassall, for your time today and for your tales and for another magnificent tournament there in Taranaki.
Thank you very much.
It was fascinating chatting to Grant. He certainly knows his stuff, but playing with David Bryant and on the same green, probably the green's changed a fair bit, but the same area as Sir Francis Drake's not a bad little effort. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. He went over to the UK and met God, really, didn't he?
Well, he did in the bowls world, definitely. I mean, like I say, bowls wasn't really my main focus when I was a young lad, but David Bryant was.
Yeah.
Him and Willie Wood.
Yes, the Scottish guy.
The appropriately named little Scotsman.
At Commonwealth Games in 2010, I think, and was the oldest person in the Scottish team at 70 whatever. So, two pretty good stories, but great to talk to Grant Hassall. I really enjoyed that chat.
Yeah, well, you've dug up some good guests. Now, who have we got next?
Next, that's a good question, Miles. Next on the line, we've got Mr. Alastair McKenzie from Royal Oak Bowls. We've got Alastair McKenzie here, who's the Royal Oak Bowls Development Officer. Can you just explain your role, please?
Yes, Alex. So, Bowls Development Officer means that I'm responsible for, growing participation at Royal Oak Bowls, where I work 20 hours a week, and at Bridge Park, where I work 8 hours a week. So it's all about growing participation. It's getting people to pick up a bowl and then become, ultimately, full members of the club. So primarily, a lot of my focus is on the social bowl side of things and the corporate bowl side of things.
How do you pick, areas to go to? I mean, have you got a special sort of hunting ground that you go to? How do you get people to sort of come along in the first place, Alastair?
Yeah, well, so that's an interesting question. It kind of started originally with wearing out some shoe leather and traipsing the streets of Penrose for Royal Oak and for around Auckland Airport for Bridge Park and knocking on doors. And just getting businesses that were interested in getting like a business house league. That's how it kind of originally started with both of those clubs, getting those business house leagues. But then they kind of take on a life of their own once you get that little bit of momentum. Those businesses talk to other businesses and it grows that way. But increasingly, I don't do that anymore. And you've got all Facebook with a boosted promotion on Facebook to spread the word around. A good example of that was just the other day I did a boost again at Royal Oak. We've got this thing called Twilight Bowls, which is a slightly more casual version, if you can imagine that, than the Social Bowls 3-5 League, which is the old business house. And did a boost there. We had 10 new people along last Wednesday night, and 2 people signed up straight away as social members. There's another 2 considering it. So, Facebook's a great tool for getting the word out these days.
Do you get people joining up just to use the club's facilities? I mean, usually bowls clubs, one thing I love about them, apart from the social atmosphere and the good people, is the cheap prices. Do you get people sort of signing up just to become club members for that?
It's always a great selling point, Miles, is the price of beer at a bowls club. But you get some that just want to do it for that reason. But I think most it's a camaraderie thing. It's sort of good fun with your mates. And my style's pitches is one of the few sports where you can actually drink and play at the same time, albeit not, of course, taking your beer across the green.
You've been at Royal Oak Bowls for a little while now. Have you seen it change over the time there? Like, what sort of impact do you feel like you've made in your time at Royal Oak Bowls, Alastair?
Well, there's a big question. Well,
Just the easy ones.
I'd like to think that people see that the sort of consistent growth that we've had with social bowls is a positive thing, and I know it is because of the constant numbers that do convert to full membership. Bridge Park is an absolute success story where we've become this sort of bit of a monster on a Friday night over there. We get before this last lockdown, we had 32 teams on a Friday night. I mean, there was no one left in Mangere Bridge on a Friday night. It's become the default thing to do, which maybe says a lot about what there is to do in Mangere Bridge on a Friday night. But you've got this whole group of 30 and 40-year-olds literally coming up the hill to play Twilight Bowl 3-5, as we call it over there, and it was brilliant, and seeing the kids running around, it was totally fantastic. So, I know from a Bridge Park perspective, they see it as a massive part of that club is now the Friday night Twilight Bowl 3-5. It's a big income earner over the bar on those Friday nights, and like it always has been at Royal Oak as well.
Now, you mentioned kids running all over the place. Do you have any connections with schools? Do you do any programs through schools or try and attract schools to take part?
Yeah, I've done a lot of that, Miles, in the past. Not so much the last year. It was linked with funding that we got from Sport Auckland, and Alex will probably know some of this actually. We did a lot of coaching at mainly primary and intermediate schools. They were very keen that we got involved with their schools, and that grew kind of exponentially. Did one school that then spoke to another, so then two schools wanted to come on board. Then I think that the record we had about 5 schools wanted to use our coaching services. So we got these rubber bowls from Australia called Junior Jack Attack, and they were terrific for these primary and intermediate kids, and got them a real sense of you watch the kids go from these sort of screaming kids running around the first session to within like a session you could get them taking weight off the bowl, aiming at targets. It was great to see their progression, and I personally got a lot of satisfaction out of seeing the kids grow like that. They had a great time, but the funding stopped last year when the governments have changed the funding model, and the schools want it to happen now outside of curriculum time, which means it's much harder for everybody. And then COVID came and whacked everything around, so it's all died a bit of a death at the moment. But I'd like to get that going again. We've had less success with the secondary schools, trying to get them into a program, and I'd like to sort of turn that into my next challenge is to try to grow secondary schools bowls. I know there's a fair bit of demand out there from some of the private schools, but to get it into the public school space is something I'd really like to work on.
Yeah, they probably, when they get to that sort of teenage years, they think they know everything, and they're too cool for school anyway. So yeah,
it's a challenge.
Good luck with that one, Alastair.
Well, yeah, but I think that's the beauty of our sport, Miles, is that it kind of offers something for everybody. You don't have to be the super athlete to be a success at bowls, as we know. But there's a lot of skills that still come into the sport, and I think a lot of people get something out of it that aren't the normal the rugby jocks or the tennis ace guy or the excellent cricketer. People can still get a lot out of our sport.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about the junior Jack Attack thing. I've got fond memories. I assisted. I was lucky enough to help you guys out a bit with that, and it was good to see the kids sort of growing. We've got a staff member that we're going to interview at some point, Miles, on this podcast called Sally McKenzie now, another McKenzie, different spelling, I think, in charge of the rangatahi strategy for Bowls New Zealand, Alastair. I'm sure she'll have a chat to you at some point, but her viewers are looking just to encourage participation in rangatahi, and we're going to run a couple of events a bit later on to cover that secondary schools and under 25 market, which is really, really cool. So I suppose, if you're a Joe Bloggs club, Alastair, and you don't have an Alastair there, what would you say to them if they're looking to try and get like a Social Bowls 3-5 or a Twilight Bowls off the ground? How do they make that happen?
Yeah, okay. All right. The first thing I think you need to have is a good food offering, which sounds strange, but I think food's absolutely vital. When you get people to come play social bowls, you want to feed them afterwards, and it's a great tool to get people in. Like Twilight Bowls at Royal Oak is this package where you get a burger and chips with your bowls for the night. So make sure you've got some kind of a food offering going.
I'm sold.
Yeah, absolutely. Second thing is to use Facebook to promote it and to do a boosted campaign. You might spend maybe $100 or something for a month. Sort of choose your area to target. Maybe it's within sort of 10 Ks or something of the Bowls Club. You can do some filtering on some of the audiences that you might want to select as well. People interested in sport or families or something like that. And get a little poster design, put it on Facebook, boost it, and if there's any community Facebook groups as well in your local area, sign up to those as well. Share your message on that, and let Facebook do its magic. And fingers crossed, you'll start to get some traction.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks, Alastair. So the last question, or the last thing that we'll be posing this to everyone today, and you've been in bowls for a little while now, so hopefully you'll have a good answer for us, no pressure. What's your favourite bowls moment? If you were to look back in the time you spent in the bowling community and you had to pick out one favourite moment, what would it be?
All right, you ready for this?
Yep.
It would be watching you deliver that bowl that won the Pirates that Bowls 3-5 tournament, and to see Alex Reid kind of go from being a guy that really didn't say a lot on the bowling green to someone who
he doesn't shut up now
and yelled out very loudly. But yeah, to watch the Pirates, because that Bowls 3-5 was a big thing. Well, it was for the Pirates, but it was for the Royal Oak Rockets as well. And to be involved in that in those first years was a fantastic thing. But yeah, just to see how you managed that win on that final bowl was pretty magic for me.
Yeah, well, I hope the cheque that he sent you doesn't bounce, Alastair. Alastair McKenzie, thank you so much for your time and for the great work that you're doing at Royal Oak Bowls. And wish you all success, especially getting into those secondary schools, because that would be another great market for you to develop.
Cheers, Miles. Cheers, Alex. Thanks, guys.
So how much did you actually pay him to say those things? Hey, I've got to say, if you're going to pick a moment, it was a great moment. I can still remember it. Probably not as well as you.
I remember it quite well.
But
yeah.
it was a great moment, and there was just no way anyone could. It was game over. No one could beat the shot that you played.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased, I must admit, Miles, at the time, and it's great that Alastair's just brought all those nice happy memories back for the rest of this podcast. I might be a bit more smiley for the next couple of guests, but yeah, it was a great moment in that Bowls 3-5 that first year.
Do you ever remind Aidan that you sort of carried him through that tournament?
No, I'm not quite that brave, Miles, but occasionally I bring up the my last bowl. Yeah, that's good.
Fantastic. Right, we've got to take a break now, but after the break, we're going to be talking to Steve Beel and chat why artificial greens can be better than natural ones. I'm looking forward to that.
We've got Steve Beel here from Bowls New Zealand to have a chat to us in this part 3 of our podcast. Your role's sort of changed a few times over the years, Steve, but at the moment you've got sort of working with Field Turf. Could you just talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We've gone into partnership with Field Turf New Zealand to look at building artificial greens. So our main man there is Mark Perham, and he is the god of drop-in cricket wickets around the world. For those that know him, he builds sports fields. He was the greenkeeper at Carrollsbrook, Mount Eden, and he's still doing it at Mount Smart. What we do is I sort of do the sales sort of pitch to clubs, and Mark comes in and does all the work. We chose him because he's the best in the business, we think, and his attention to detail and workmanship is just great. And I've just seen a couple of his builds just recently, and clubs are very happy with what they're getting with the artificials.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of Key on Facebook the other day. Steve, was that Mark's work?
That's Mark's work here. No, we've just finished Key, Masterton, and Manly Bowling clubs. Yeah, no, it's going on, and we've got quite a few up our sleeve to get started in the next few weeks as well. So, yeah, no, it's going well for the clubs. They're ending up with a great product, great green to play on, and clubs are happy. So,
how much has technology improved the artificial surfaces, Steve?
Oh, it's improved out of sight. Like 10, 15 years ago, they were sort of sand-based astros that the players used to hate because it scratched their bowls, and it was quite a fickle game to be played on, those sort of things, whereas the carpet now is almost like playing on a billiard table. Whilst it can never be perfect, it's a streets ahead of where it was 10, 15 years ago, mate.
What are the biggest hassles with them? If you're going to have issues, what are the issues that are liable to crop up?
Generally in the workmanship of the build. I've found that if they get the base right and everything else right, then the green will generally play well. So if the contractor does their job and builds it correctly, then most have a good green to play on. Yeah, it's generally in that area there, Miles.
That's interesting. So, we talk about these artificials being pretty good now, and I remember I've played on some very slow and interesting artificials in my short little bowls career. So, how quick can we expect these Mark Perrin ones to be running? Like, what do they run at, Steve?
Mate, we're aiming for that 16 and a half seconds speed, which is it's a speed that you can play, as you know, Alex, you can play all the shots on that there. It's not silly fast, and it's not a heave in New Zealand terms. So, yeah, we're aiming for around that. Like a new green just gone down. I was over at Key there, and it's already running at 15 seconds, so it just needs some play, a couple of stretches, and it'll be running beautiful at that 16 and a half very soon.
Do they last a while, these artificials?
They do now, yes. Whilst the manufacturers guarantee is 7 or 8 years, we're expecting, if the club maintains them properly, vacuums them and sprays them for all the moss mould and stuff, but we're going to get at least 15 plus years out of them. Easy.
How easy are they to clean as such? Like if some errant fool walks across illegally carrying his drink and spills it in the middle, which I seem to remember happened at New Lynn. I can't remember who knocked the beer over, but someone did. How easy are they to clean?
Yeah, it's just like any carpet. They're easy to be cleaned. It's no really caustic sort of materials to be used on them. But if they're vacuumed every second, third, fourth week, and probably sprayed for moth, mould and gunge, so to speak, to use an advert from another company. It's easy as, but I think nowadays, though, if someone like yourself did walk on the green with a beer miles, they might be in the crosshairs fairly soon from someone that'll take aim at you, mate.
Don't look at me, Steve. I'm not going to risk. I'm not brave enough to do that. I might be silly enough, but I'm not brave enough to do it.
That's fair enough. So another part of your role, or one of the things you've done in bowls for a while, Steve, is sort of you've had a bit to do with the Bowls New Zealand Greenkeepers Association. And as a bowler, like I've played in a few nationals, I've always wondered, when they talk about rating the greens for a national championship, what's the sort of stuff you guys look at when you go out to a centre before a national championship and are trying to put them in order of like best to not so good?
Yeah, one of the great things that Mark's done coming into the role is that he listened to the fact that some of the greens weren't up to standard for like our major premier events. So we've engaged with the Bowls New Zealand Greenkeepers Association. So the guys like Rob Gibson and Morris Symes, James Williams and co. With us, we go around and evaluate all the greens. some months out, and then just prior to the event. So, we check things like the legal requirements, just make sure the banks are right, the ditches are right, and all that sort of thing. Make sure the ditches are holding. You would have experienced that yourself, where the jack goes squirting out when it shouldn't have. And, things like the draw, just make sure there's an even draw. There's no great big swing on one hand and virtually straight on the other. We check green speed. We check for mixed weeds, whether that's impacting on the draw of the bowl, levelness, the whole 9 yards.
What reaction do you get, Steve, when you tell a greenkeeper who's all excited about his baby and his pride and joy, and you say, frankly, mate, it's not up to it?
Well, most of them actually welcome it, because the beauty of using like Rob and Morris on these things, they're outstanding greenkeepers in their own right. And so Morris and Rob and that, they're coaching them into saying, hey, look, these are the things that can fix this. The initial assessment might just put them on a program to make sure it is right further down the track. So, the greenkeepers like working cooperatively. It can get a bit touchy sometimes when you say, well, actually, no. But, in the main, it's the ones that I've been on, the greenkeepers have welcomed the feedback.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And the Greenkeepers Association do a great job, and they've been sort of moving with the times from the little bits and pieces I've picked up on. Steve, did I read somewhere they've got like a course or something for newbie greenkeepers or people looking to just get the basic skills?
Yeah, they have. And the Greenkeepers Association, through our partnership with Prebbles, have funded a training course for more or less greenkeepers assistants sort of thing there, Alex. So whilst it teaches them how to mow, it doesn't teach them when to mow. It teaches them how to spray, not when to spray and what to spray. So with the growth of greens contractors, where some of our top greenkeepers have more than one club under their belt, this training course will allow the club people who assist these people to do those basic jobs around that take up so much time, and so that they can do it correctly and provide a great green.
So if I'm like Joe Blogg's club listening to this podcast and hearing you talk about that, who do I have to contact? Do I just Google Bowls New Zealand Greenkeepers Association, or what's my best way of sort of investigating this?
Well, they're going to have to wait. I think it's this month. The greenkeepers, the trainers are getting trained. But if they get hold of either me, I can put them in the right direction, or then they'll find me on the website, or Greenkeepers Association, Google that, Morris or Rob would be more than happy to talk to them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think, to be fair, I think greenkeepers is something that us bowlers tend to, we take them for granted a little bit, and it's really easy to sort of sit after a game of bowls and go, why didn't they do this or that? But I'd just like to acknowledge how much they do, and that Greenkeepers Association sounds like they do a brilliant job as well.
Like our greenkeepers, is my late great-grandfather used to say, who was a bowls greenkeeper, he says it takes a magician years to get a great green, but it's very easy to muck one up. And then you've heard the stories of the wrong spray being used, and So they do a magic job.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Stephen. We've been asking one question of everyone, and I'm sure you'll have, you've been playing bowls for a little while, so you have a good answer for this, but the one question we've been asking everyone so far is if you could pick one bowls moment, your favourite bowls moment in your career, what would it be, Steve?
I've been fortunate enough to win a couple of national titles, and they're always the pinnacle, mate. I'd swap all centre and club events for just one more anytime. So, national titles.
You won't have to swap them, Steve. You just go out there and dig it in and make sure that you've playing on a green that you've actually manufactured to your particular requirements. Thank you so much for your time, Steve Beel, and we look forward to the progression of greens around the country under your tutelage.
Cheers, guys. Nice talking.
Yeah, that was an interesting chat then, wasn't it, Miles, with Steve about greenkeepers and artificials?
Yeah,
and
it's fascinating. And artificial seems to be getting more and more popular. And I suppose it means you can play all year round.
Yeah, it does, and they are playing well nowadays. I think we make the mistake as bowlers. You get scarred. You get scarred for life. You go and play a meat pack tournament somewhere and play on this dodgy artificial that was laid down 20 years ago, and your bowls are bumping up the green or going out of bounds. I think we tend to paint all artificials with that brush, and that's really not the case. They're playing.
And getting Mark
good now.
Perham on board is a good person to be dealing with, because the guy has got vast experience in turf culture, if that's such a word. Right, we're going to take a break and we'll be back. We're going to find out how coaching in New Zealand could be changed forever, and who better to talk to than Graeme Rees.
Okay, Miles, so on the line with us now, we've got our last guest for this podcast, Graeme Rees, and he's here to talk to us about all things coaching. You built it up in the before the break about how we could be changing coaching forever, and I'm sure I haven't oversold it, Graeme, because you've been involved in the high performance coaching space for a number of years now with Bowls New Zealand, but you've just picked up is it a 1 day a week role you've got there?
Yes, it is, and I've done a coach development lead role for probably 2 or 3 years now, and it's been formalised this year, and Mark Cameron's asked me to reframe the coach development side of things, and so I've put together a coaching plan for this year, and already caught up with a number of coaches and coach developers throughout the country to convey what our plans are. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite exciting, Graeme, this idea of having modules, because at the moment, the way, and we just sort of vaguely explain it, but we've got sort of 3 levels of coaches, don't we, Graeme? You've got your foundation and development and performance coach, and if Joe Bloggs wants to become a coach, you start off at the beginning, and you have to put aside like 1 or 2 days of your time to go to a bowling club and sit there and get talked to and with. It's just a lot of time to invest to become a coach in one bulk lot. I quite like the idea of, if I'm a full-time worker and I play bowls on the weekend and I'm interested in coaching, I can just hop on and have a look at the modules, and we're making them. What was the module that we want them to start off on with, Graeme? It's about communication, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's it's the player support module, so it's made up of about 5 subcategories. We're looking at communication, as you say, is one of them, and then leadership, the coach approaches, we term it. So it just gives people that grounding in terms of how to communicate with players, and etiquette and observation, as I mentioned before, is a key one as well.
Will you still, Graeme, get an opportunity to go, face to face with coaches up and down the country, or are you going to be sort of, isolated in Thunderbird 5 in outer space, just communicating via email?
It's still important that we do have that face-to-face contact, but probably more in an observation role of observing our people working with their players, and likewise they could come along and observe one of our performance coaches actually working with an athlete or a number of athletes in a team environment. So, and from time to time we still we'll run what used to be called the foundation course and the development course as well. So both of those are still part of what we offer, but I can see more emphasis, or our focus really being in this online learning space over the next 12 months.
Graeme, if there was one, I mean, it's sort of multifaceted, and each player, each coach is going to be different, but if there was one key attribute or asset that a good coach should have, what do you think it would be?
Well, it's definitely the communication and building the relationship with the player. And what we'll probably find, Miles, is some players will try, say, a coach, and it won't work for them, and they'll go to the next one, and that's just the way people operate. And some strengths people have will work for some, and not for others. So, but it does come back to that communication side.
I'm quite excited, to be honest, and I'll have something to do with it as well. Graeme and I'll be sort of vaguely working together on putting these modules together. Just make it clear we're not sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Is that the saying? It's just the same content with this coaching stuff, but in a slightly different context, which is really cool. So I encourage anyone listening to this to keep an eye out on the Bowls New Zealand Facebook and website and everything about, some pretty exciting stuff coming up with the coaching, Graeme.
It's interesting, Graeme, actually, because I know you're passionate about coaching, and I can see here, you should see his beaming face. Alex is really excited about his involvement in this, and all I can say is that if between the pair of you, with that sort of energy, enthusiasm, and experience as well, it's got to be good. It's got to be good. The outcome's got to be good.
Yeah, over the last few years, we've built up a lot of content with some of the Zoom discussions and meetings that we've had, and it will be great to sort of get those into one place. And as Alex said, we'll be retaining what we've had previously, because the content of both those, the foundation development courses, has been fantastic. But it'll be great also to bring some of that stuff we've done over the last few years into this, and also some new stuff as well. So, yeah, it's really just a reframing or a reshaping of where we've been, and to build more enthusiasm out there in our community to get people working with our players.
Yeah. So what sort of timeline are we talking with this, Graeme? Because we've talked about, how the system's going to change and all that stuff, but how long will it take, do you think, for there to be this module system in place properly?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get the most of the modules completed by 30 April, and then we'll test and learn for the first 6 months of this year, and tweak anything that we may need to. And so certainly by the end of the year, we'll know whether we've got a successful model here and how it's going.
And we're testing with sort of vaguely volunteers, aren't we? People who can do these modules and work their way through it. Is that right?
Yeah, the idea is that we get about 15 people on initially, and test with them in terms of how the modules work, and make sure that we've got it right, and get their feedback as to what is working in terms of the modules, and what may not be working, and so that's basically where we're heading in the next 6 months.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. Thanks for sort of enlightening us. And I'm sure, we spoke to Steve Beel about greenkeepers before, and I think coaches fall into a similar category where, Joe Blogg's bowler, it's easy just to you either forget that coaches exist, or if they do, it's easy to be a bit dismissive. And I think we don't appreciate how helpful having a lot of coaches and having good coaches can be in a bowl situation. And hopefully this module thing sort of takes a step towards remedying that, I think, Graeme.
Yeah, I agree, and it'll just be a refreshing sort of look at what we've done previously, and we've still got the performance coach sitting out to one side, Alex, and so that works pretty well with our high performance athletes and our blackjacks squad at the moment. So we're not losing that. We've still got that sitting in place. We're not losing the foundational development coaching courses at this stage. We're sort of running those into Miles' point earlier on. We will get face to face with people in those environments, but the online module side of it just gives people, as you said before, Alex, who work full time, an opportunity if they're keen to get involved, and without it being too onerous for them.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Graeme. I've got a question to finish the chat on. We've asked the other three people as well, and I'm sure you'll give us a good answer. If you were to pick one moment in your career in bowls as a coach or a player that was your favourite moment, what would you pick? What's your favourite bowls moment?
Oh, well, it has to be a coaching moment, and it would be back in 2008 with the World Bowls team to win 6 out of 8 medals here in Christchurch was pretty surreal, and to work with the best of the best and to beat the best of the best around the world here. But our next challenge, having said that, is at that level to win overseas, and I know Mike Kernan's doing a lot of work towards Birmingham, which we're all hoping COVID keeps its head down, and that we can get over there and achieve the same results as we have at home previously. So we're doing a lot of hard work in that area. So the excitement of being involved with the best bowlers in the world and has been probably the highlight of my bowls career, Alex.
And a great highlight as well, and a great way to finish this podcast and the chat. Thank you so much, Graeme Rees, and fingers crossed that Birmingham does go ahead and that the Blackjacks dominate.
Indeed. Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Alex.
You are very excited, though, aren't you, about this, your involvement in it? Do you see? Have you got sort of coaching aspirations, like to become a super coach?
Not a super coach, but I'm lucky enough to be on. We're running something called a performance coach course at the moment. So performance coaching is sort of, it's not the high level, but it sort of sits to the side. So it covers sort of all the content that we put into the modules is in this performance coach course. Myself and a number of other people have been doing for the last year and a half. Finishes in a few months, which is exciting, Miles. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to be able to change the way we deliver all this information to people, and hopefully it results.
You could get more people, can't you? I mean, more people are going to have access to it. Just quickly before we finish the show, as doing this performance coaching course and studying about it, has that helped improve you as a player? Do you, when you're doing that as a coaching thing, you suddenly think, oh yeah, I'm not doing that, and my coach could tell me to do that? And
that's a really interesting question, and what I've found, and we found it when you talk to bowlers who've had success, and I've been playing bowls for a long time, so you sort of pick up received wisdom, I suppose, from good bowlers, and you don't have it named for it, and you don't have the academic bits and pieces, but when you look at the content we've learned on this performance coaching course, quite often you go, oh, that actually makes sense. That is a name and a system for what I learned from, Tweedledee, someone who told me something a while ago that I thought was a good idea. So when you think about the good bowlers and talk to them about how they play bowls and the systems they do, even if they haven't had a coach, they're successful for a reason, and often they've subconsciously sort of come up with their own parallel system. So yeah, it's a really good question and very interesting. I'd encourage, when we have the modules up and running, even if you don't have any aspirations of being a coach, just have a look at them because it's worthwhile.
Well, I look forward to your graduation party when when you become the performance coaching superstar that we all know you will be. Well, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of the Bowls Hour, the show for all things bowls with Somerset Retirement Homes and Dynasty Apparel. Tune in next week as we continue rolling on and analysing the 2022 season.
They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them. Fantastic looking facility there in the deep south. I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight. From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or for bottom with 6 points and second for bottom with 5? Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4, and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it?
The Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel.